And we are recording. Go ahead, Chair.
Great. Good morning, everybody. This is Brenda, your chair, and we are now calling this meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Moses was not able to join us today. Mayor Becky Daggett.
Here.
Thank you, Mayor. Ashley Page.
Not seeing Ashley online at the moment, but I will note if she joins us.
Thank you. Lorena Knapp.
Here.
Do you prefer Lori, Lorena?
Either way, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. Nadine Hart. I don't see Nadine.
Also expected. I'll make a note when if she joins.
Thank you. And Tatum Kobe.
I'm here.
Thank you, Tatum. Okay. Hang on a second. Public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the board on any subject within the board's jurisdiction that is not on the meeting's agenda. The Arizona Open Meeting Law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on an item that is not listed on the prepared agenda. Commissioners may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the board, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that the matter be placed on future agenda. To address the board on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time the item is heard. Thank you. And we will start with the approval of the meeting minutes from February 20th. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Daggett. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have 2 seconds. So either one, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes as presented from the February 20th meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Got it. All opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. So we'll move right into our agenda. Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you. I shared a screen and then the meeting went away. There we go. Good morning, everybody. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. I shortened plus added so that we're not going over the same information that we had previously. And it's on the screen and I can't move it. So when I look over here to see where I am, that's what I'm doing. So good morning, everybody. I really appreciate you coming together for a special meeting so that we're able to move this forward on timelines that HUD has requested. So, there we go. Purpose of the presentation today is consideration of Board Resolution 2502, which is the Housing Authority Board recommending City Council accept the transfer of the Williams Housing Authority Housing Choice Voucher Program. Of course, we've been presented with this opportunity to increase our number of housing choice vouchers by 50 via voluntary transfer from the City of Williams. Quick outline on today. There was some additional information requested during our last meeting, so I brought that with me. We'll go quickly over how a transfer works and then the timeline. I do want to take a moment to point out, as I do every time I talk about this publicly, that no current voucher holder in the City of Williams will see any impact beyond the staff they work with, changing from City of Williams to City of Flagstaff. Everyone will remain per their choice, housing choice voucher if they want to, if they can, but that will not be a requirement. They can remain leased in place where they are. So, you asked for some additional information, so I put together the statistics and data that folks were interested in seeing. We have, this is our local impact in the community, 530 vouchers. Currently, we have 121 participating landlords. That's an average of just over 4 vouchers per landlord. Of course, some landlords serve 1 and some landlords serve more, but we have 121 participating landlords. And on average, last year in 2024, I'm rounding when I say we put into the local economy just as part of the HAP payments, which is the payment that goes to the landlord on behalf of the participant, about $600,000 a month into the community, not counting paying staff, et cetera, just the HAP payments. Of course, I'm rounding there. It's $599,927,000 on average last year per month. So I wanted to chat about what utilization is, so the board has a better understanding of what utilization is. And take a moment and acknowledge my very first AI created graphic I did on my free AI tries because I couldn't find one I liked. And I was going to make it a little greener underneath, but I was out of free tries. So you're stuck with some brown dirt at the bottom.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I can learn new things. So what you see is we're balancing funding and people with housing in the middle. And so utilization takes not only into account the number of vouchers leased and or searching, but the amount of the HAP budget that we've spent. So if you recall, when we are awarded funding for HAP, which is the Housing Assistance Payment from HUD, we're not given a number based on this many 1-bedrooms and this many 4-bedrooms. We're given a number overall. And it's our responsibility to manage that budget. And when we live in a high cost area like we do, where we have approved the payment of rents up to 110% of fair market rent, that means that money might go less far. And so utilization also takes into account that budgetary component. There are times where agencies become over leased, where more vouchers are leased than we necessarily have the budget for. And at that point in time, we pull back until we have some attrition in the program. It is a teeter-totter picture because it truly is a teeter-totter of balance. And our staff does a very, very good job of balancing this financially and with issuing vouchers, so that we stay within that careful balance. And this is a rough explanation of it, but it really talks about, I wrote this, it's not a HUD definition. The careful balance that it is utilization is a careful balancing act, taking into account the number of vouchers leased and our housing assistance payment budget used in an ever-changing rental market where the maximum amount of vouchers worth is based on 2-year-old data, and the federal budget amounts are decided often months into the funding year. So HCV, the voucher programs, are funded on a calendar year basis. It's March 4th. We don't have a budget yet this year. And sometimes it's been as late as July or August before Congress finishes their appropriations. And we're that many months into the funding year for the voucher program before we're finding out exactly how much money we're getting. So it truly is this consistently monitoring balancing act of what that looks like. And so during continuing resolutions, during those moments where Congress has not yet decided on budget, the assumption is, and this is the direction from HUD and other federal agencies, is that you can plan on the funding continuing based on last year's funding. So it's more than just how many are leased, how many are searching. It's also that budgetary piece. So our utilization numbers annually are over 98% for more than 15 years. We're a high-performing agency according to HUD metrics, and in order to achieve that, our utilization rate must be over 98%. And again, that takes into account both budgeting and voucher utilization. So issuance to move in sometimes is informally called search time. Here, I reworded that to be reflective of really more what it is. And that is the issuance date when a household is, here's your voucher, go forth and identify housing. And the issuance date and move-in date. So that's not the search time necessarily. It's the time from when a household is issued a voucher, identifies a property, executes the rental agreement, request for tenancy approval with the landlord. Then there's inspections that have to be done on our part for move-in, but it's also households giving notice to whatever lease that they're in, unless they are exiting homelessness or leasing in place. So when we say the issuance to move-in time, that most often includes giving notice to a previous landlord. And so our issuance to move-in time in a number of days is 18% is less than 30 days. And then you see here that from 30 to 60 days, that number goes up by an additional 40%, meaning that we have 58% at under 60 days. We have 38% in that 60 to 90 day range and only 4% up in the 90 to 120 day range. That's not always the case. Occasionally we have households that will go a bit beyond the 120 days. Last year, these are calendar year 2024 numbers. In 2023, we had 2 households that went beyond that 120 day number, but you can see that that's really an exception. If we compare that to the national statistics, especially in high rent areas, which we are. Yes, ma'am, I will pause for your question.
I just had a question. Do they have a limit to the number of days they can use? Does the voucher go away if they don't get leased up in a certain number of days?
The voucher will expire. Charisse, if you can nod, please. I believe it's 180 days.
Thank you.
The full term is 120, but they're given in increments. So 60 days and then 30 and then 30.
And we're able to extend that if there are extenuating circumstances.
Great. Thank you very much.
I see one more hand up. Nadine, did you have a question?
I did. So basically, 98% of the people, it takes more than 30 days to find homes. And the panic button is for the 42% that are potentially at 60 to 90 days. So if you're at 90 days, I mean, 60 to 90 doesn't really capture the panic figure. Because if that 38% is closer to 80 to 90 days, they don't have much time to find housing. So my concern with adding 50, what are you guys going to do? I don't care about national average. I care about local results. What do you guys have in place to lower those move-in days? I mean, you mentioned that you've got the great relationship with landlords. Is that even a concern for you guys? Or I just want to know what you can tell the board you have in place to reduce these move-ins, given the relationships that you have with landlords in our community.
So I'd like to go ahead and share the national averages because that will help frame it quite a bit. So we are well below the national averages. So forgive me while I look at my notes.
Sarah, I understand that. I just say I don't care about national averages. I care about what we're doing locally.
Ms. Hart,
to lower our averages. But
Ms. Hart, please allow me to
answer the question.
Please allow me to frame this for the rest of the board, and then I'm happy to answer your question. But let me finish giving the background information, please. So in high rent areas, they have accomplished usually 29% within the first 60 days, where we're at 58% within the first 60 days. And additionally, they see that number increase to only 44% at the 90-day mark. And so when we're comparing those numbers to ours, we are significant. Our search times, our issuance to move-in times are much shorter than we see in comparable communities. And so with statistics showing that voucher holders are leasing up in timeframes well above the national average, we do have assistance for those that truly struggle or have other identifying issues, especially for voucher holders like our emergency housing voucher holders, our VASH voucher holders, of course, partner with the VA, et cetera. But our statistics, not only for the past year, but for the past few years also show that we don't have voucher holders needing long extensions in order to be able to utilize their voucher within the community. And so also important to note, and this is really indicative of that 18% at less than 30 days is it's estimated 10 to 15% of new voucher holders lease in place, which means that their voucher is applied to the place where they're already living. It just makes their rent more affordable in that location because then they're only paying 30% of their income towards that rent. And so quite often in the less than 30 days, that's really what we're seeing is the lease in place or the exiting homelessness population, because the others typically need to give a 30 to 60-day notice, depending on what their lease is, in order to move to a new unit. And I wanted to also share with you items like, let's see, our success rate for voucher lease up, our turnover, and then our HAP budget utilization. So the success rate, which is the rate that issued vouchers actually result in lease up, is 70% locally. And nationally, that number is 10 percentage points below. There's a number of reasons for this. Sometimes people decide the community isn't for them. Sometimes they decide this isn't a program that they wish to participate in, given the number of requirements that they're required to fulfill, et cetera. And so we're at least a full 10 percentage points above national averages for success rates. Our annual turnover is right in line with what we're seeing nationally at this point in time. And again, turnover can be a result of many, many things. Sometimes folks are evicted. Sometimes they voluntarily surrender their voucher. Sometimes they're not able to meet the requirements of the program. Sometimes they pass away and that voucher becomes available again. So our turnover is just 1 percentage point higher. I tried not to round too many things. And we're seeing, excuse me, nope, turnover, lost my train of thought. There it is, turnover rate right at the national average. And then our housing assistant payment budget utilization. We are typically between 98% and 104% of utilizing all of the HAP money we are given on an annual basis by HUD to assist folks with rental payments. I'm not concerned over the 104%, or even if it was a little higher, because HUD acknowledges that that is a difficult target because there are so many factors in that teeter-totter going into it. And we have reserves to cover those overages. 104% is not, that 4% is not a massive number. Our reserves for this purpose are well in excess of that, but it really shows the effort staff puts into managing those budgets so that we're spending as much as we can without overspending, which also means we're able to issue up to the highest amount of vouchers that we already have. The last time we met, I believe I mentioned utilization not based on money, just on voucher lease up was 96, 97%. The end of January numbers, end of February numbers are not done yet. It's March 4th. Was 100% voucher utilization between issuances and searching. And so that number is unpredictable as far as what vouchers will come back to us, and that we can then reissue to other households. So our waiting list numbers, you had also requested our waiting list right now, 3 weeks ago, just over 2,500, a total number on our waiting list. 890 of those households have identified that they qualify for the residency preference. Average wait time to receive assistance varies. If you are an out-of-state household, your wait time can be quite lengthy because we do have the residency preference in place, except for the mainstream vouchers, which we talked about in the fall with changing HUD regulations there. So the voucher program has an approximate wait time of 18 to 36 months or more right now. That number used to be much higher. So we're really seeing, I wish we had vouchers the day somebody walked in the door. I really do. Our waiting list is open. Many agencies don't maintain a continuously open waiting list. They open in windows and let people apply within those windows. We've been fortunate enough to be able to keep a rolling waiting list number with 18 to 36 months in general before people come up near the top of the list. Quite often when we have the numbers with the residency preference, because it's a self-certification, we'll invite folks in for eligibility interviews, and they don't actually live here, which at that point in time, they wash out for the residency preference. So there must be proof of residency at that point in time. We had questions previously about service area. Thank you to our GIS people who helped me make maps. Didn't help me make maps, made maps. So I should be clear on that one. So our service area is published as 01 through 05, and that's the area where a voucher holder can lease up. It is hard to see, and I don't think I can blow it up. I can blow it up. See this little purple right here? That's 86015. That's Belmont. And so as we were looking at these and discussing as staff, the board request to consider making our service area include some additional surrounding areas. This one really makes sense. I didn't have time yet to bring that to you because there'll be more work associated with it. Expanding our service area to an area like Belmont, it's not incorporated, so it's likely doable. It also has a small population, which won't introduce an excessively large demand, increase the demand for vouchers excessively. With something like the expansion to the area of Williams, it comes with resources. It's very different to talk about expanding a service area when that service area comes with additional resources that can help service, versus expanding the number of eligible households in an area without increasing the associated resources. Some of you may be looking at it and being like, holy cow, those are big zip codes. They are. But what we had, if I can get there we go. I had skipped it. The dots on this map are housing units, they're addresses. It's not separated rental or ownership, it's just housing units. So every dot on this map is an address. And so, and businesses, they're all addresses. So as you can see, yes, 86004 goes way over to the county line. There's not housing units all along that area. And so the same thing going up 89, Donny Park, etc. You can see that our eligibility area already includes Kachina and Mount Nair, all of the Donny Park area up north of Flagstaff, past Cheshire, etc. And so when we don't necessarily see lease agreements coming in for the areas that are way out I-40 or way up 89 or 180, because there just aren't housing units there that are available. But if they were to come in, our service area is defined by zip codes, and we would be servicing in those areas.
Sarah, Nadine has a question.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the blue and the green. So we do Kachina and Mount Nair?
Yes, we do Kachina, Mount Nair, Donny Park. I had the lovely GIS. Her name is Chelsea. I'll just use her name. I asked Chelsea to put on a marker for North 89 of Wapaki, because you can see we go all the way out to Wapaki, encompass Kachina and Mount Nair, out to Mormon Lake, that there's not many rental units out there, etc. So encompassing Belmont is something that we can absolutely examine and is likely an administrative change.
What about that little chunk past Belmont? Is that too far to go? Because I see, like, I'm just looking at it from like Flagstaff to Williams. That's a long way to go. Is that little chunk, just that little cluster just past, is that too far to add to the program?
So we haven't had time yet to complete that analysis. I've been focused on this other piece. The Belmont one is an easy one. We met quickly as staff was like, yeah, this makes sense. Extending further out is going to require some additional analysis. One of the reasons Belmont makes sense is that it's on a water system. And so voucher lease up in areas that haul water is more challenging as far as utility reimbursements, et cetera, go. And so there's additional analysis we'd like to do. There's also, I would like other work to do is how many rental units are out there, how much population, what are we adding for population that's going to increase the demand on the vouchers that we have, and so what makes sense. So we'll bring that forward to you, likely not in March, yeah, I'm not going to have it done in March. But we will look at that. Does it make sense to do the whole I-40 corridor? I'm not sure yet, but we're happy to take a look at it. Our challenge is any incorporated areas, because that's a whole different ballgame jurisdictionally if there's incorporated areas. So based on the board request for us to consider this, we'll continue further work in that direction.
Tatum has a question.
Yeah, I was just gonna add in that my understanding is that's the parks area and there tends to be a lot of hauling water out there. And so it's a hard place to service because of that, unfortunately. A lot of folks off the grid.
Yes, thank you. And that's one of our concerns. We want to, if we're going to expand a service area, we want it to be a functional expansion, not just a, well, yeah, you can rent. I mean, you can look, but there's not a piece. So time to do that initial analysis and bring recommendations forward to the board is where we are.
Nadine?
Oh, I just like in regards to the difficulties for certain houses, the houses still have to qualify within your criteria anyway. The only reason why I brought it up is the further we move out of Flagstaff, the cheaper rent can be. So I just hope the board might consider some of those things and keep in mind that it does have to meet the HUD criteria. So not all these houses will even meet it. And that's up to the tenants, the people with the vouchers, to preemptively make sure that those things are met. So I think it would be great if we could consider this down the road, because it would be cheaper. People could find things within the limits and even get something lower than the allowable voucher limit, saving some money. So thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate the explanation.
You're welcome. Thank you for the
Thank you,
question.
Nadine. Any further questions so far? Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you. Did it move? There it goes. All right. Multifamily new construction in Flagstaff. There was an expressed concern about not having housing units necessarily for folks to live in. I do want to point out that because of our residency preferences, any of the new vouchers, wow, I needed more coffee. The folks that would be eligible for these vouchers are already living either here or in Williams because of the residency preference. So it's not importing a bunch of households from outside the community, et cetera. It's folks that are already here. But while I was at it, I worked with our building and planning departments to pull, and this is just multifamily, this is not single family construction, but in 2024, there were 712 new rental units completed. 600 of those are market rate, with 112 of them affordable. Currently under construction right now is 564 additional rental units, with 321 of those being market rate and 243 of those being affordable. 220 of that 243 are within the Roars development. And those, because they are a tax credit project, are required to be placed in service no later than the end of this calendar year. Some of that 321 is super close to certificate of occupancy to being done. Some of those are in the middle of town. And so those are not numbers that are like might come someday. That's currently what was completed last year and is currently under construction, just multifamily units, not single family. And then since January 2022 to January 2024, there's an additional 1,917 multifamily units approved for development. Of course, when a developer chooses to initiate that construction is out of our control, but that's what's approved for development. Probably close to 250 to 300 of that number I can speak to off the top of my head is being designated as affordable. And that's just off the top of my head. So we have plenty of units coming into the community at this point in time, and multiples of them designated as affordable. So to quickly review the request, and then I'll move to how the transfer works. Request, of course, HUD and City of Williams approached us for this to request that we accept this voluntary transfer. So how does a transfer work? There's some very specific HUD required criteria. There's approval of this transfer both from the surrendering and receiving agency. We'd be the receiving. Approval from state and national headquarters of HUD. It's bolded. It's important. Protection of current voucher holders. Their rights and responsibilities are preserved. We're looking at a July 1 formal effective date. We're also required to preserve a leasing ability in both service areas. We become one service area, even non-contiguous. And then I wrote legal because there's, I say a team of lawyers, it sounds like a billion. We have an outside attorney who has previously done this with another set of Arizona housing authorities. It's a blessing to have an attorney who's done this previously and isn't learning it as we go, as well as a representative in our city attorney's office taking care of the legal things on our part. Of course, City of Williams has folks making sure things are legal on their end, and then HUD, Office of General Counsel out of LA, has a lead and a second attorney assigned to this to make sure that things are being done correctly and are able to move forward. So again, those 50 general purpose vouchers, not special population, very hard to come by, will be added to our program overall. We're not looking at a Williams program and a City of Flagstaff program. This is not an administration agreement. It is a full transfer. Mouse is on the wrong screen. There we go. So all current leased vouchers will stay that way. I've mentioned that a couple times. The only impact to Williams households is who they're working with. All unutilized vouchers will be able to be issued to folks on our waiting list, and all vouchers will be able to be leased up in our current service area and the city limits of Williams. Here's what that looks like. The yellow on the left-hand side is the Williams city limits. Again, Williams chose to limit this to their city limits based on water supply, based on hookups to permanent infrastructure versus water hauling, etc. And so that is the Williams city limits. Excuse me. Why would we do it? We've talked about this before. I won't spend a lot of time, but it is bringing increased resources to our community. It does increase our service area for voucher holders to be able to lease up in. It does preserve these vouchers in Northern Arizona, our community, as well as housing resources. This will not require daily staff presence in Williams. We're thinking once the initial cleanup is done, there is cleanup to do. We're estimating 1, maybe 2 staff days a month in Williams. City of Williams has agreed to provide us furnished office space with Wi-Fi connections at no charge, and all significant risks will be mitigated or we won't accept the transfer. All the money will transfer to us, all of their, I mentioned the HUD held reserves, that transfers. All of the money dedicated to this program comes to us. There'll be some things we'll need to pay attention to. Their vouchers have been under lease. There may not be enough sitting there. We've spoken with HUD about that, and there's ways to access additional HAP funding that doesn't jeopardize our program. And I'll talk about one of the contingencies in a second. The additional admin funding will augment necessary funding for us to add a staff person to vouchers, which will really, really help spread out that workload that we've assumed over the past several years with the special populations vouchers that we've been granted by HUD, and then this additional influx of 50. All right, acceptance conditions, pretty important. So we've talked about being held fully harmless financially and programmatically. This is written in what you will see as all matters occurring up to the transfer date. So anything that took place before the transfer date between Williams and the city of HUD, Williams, their landlords, Williams, their attorneys, whoever it is, will not land on us. We will be held fully harmless. We've added a condition, which thank you to attorneys, to be held fully harmless for all matters that occur after the transfer date up to a time period of 2 years for things that occurred but were not discovered prior to or within the first year of the transfer date. So let's say we're transferring something and we come across an impropriety or something that needs to be fixed. that was not on our behalf. It's something that we're dealing with. This holds us harmless from that as well. So it's not only the things that were identified prior to July 1, anything in the 2-year time period after that, that was not our doing, will be held harmless from as well. And again, the HUD Phoenix field office has made a commitment to request these contingencies when submitting the transfer letter. We are insisting that programmatically we be held, that the CMAP, we have a CMAP waiver for the first full year following the transfer. CMAP is the Section 8 Management Assistance Program, which is our scoring. That's where our high performer rating comes from. So our high performer rating will not be jeopardized through assuming a number of vouchers that are under compliance or our lease up time period. So when we get an allocation of new vouchers, HUD allows us typically to determine a lease up time period that makes sense in our community. And so it's not day one, go, new vouchers, they must be done this month. It keeps it out of our scores for a time period to allow us to get up to that level, since it is an influx of new. And of course, we work on balancing issuance with our staff time as well, because of course we're maintaining all of our current clients as well. So we're asking for 12-month lease up time for the transferred vouchers. A couple, let's see, last contingency would be technical assistance. We've defined it a little more since I last spoke to you about it. They said 18 months. The attorney suggested that we define how many hours a month. So we're looking at 40 hours a month starting before at the point of transfer for all areas of impact, with the ability for us to extend this time to the point of completion of the financial and programmatic audit if they're not done at the end of 18 months. We're not always masters of our destiny with the audit. We are part of the city of Flagstaff, and so that larger organizational audit sometimes takes longer. And I want that technical. If HUD has directed us to do something one way and the auditor says, why did you do that? I would like to connect those two parties to speak to each other. Of course, we'll get everything in writing, but it would be good for them for HUD to be able to say, no, we directed the agency to do this, so that we're not running into troubles with audits, either financially or programmatically. And then also supporting our staff in reconciling all kinds of things that we're going to find. Some of we anticipate, and we know that there are a few things that will come up that we just haven't been able to anticipate. What's our timeline look like? We started this conversation with Williams and HUD in May, June last year. As I mentioned last time, it took quite a while for us to get to a point where I felt comfortable bringing it forward for consideration. There were just too many gray areas, and HUD had not made a commitment on that hold harmless thing until early December of this year. We visited with you guys on January 16th. A discussion only item was taken to City Council on February 25th. We're back today, March 4th, with City Council consideration scheduled for March 18th, should the Housing Authority Board recommend approval. And then documents go to HUD on April 1st. April 1st, documents go to HUD. HUD does what they do. The field office has 30 days to write the review what we submit, write the transfer letter, and send it to headquarters. Headquarters has 30 days. It's not a hard deadline for them. It says to the extent possible 30 days. Excuse me, the 30-day piece. And then hypothetically, we could know June 1st if they're going to approve it or not. That gives us about a 30-day lead time before the effective date of July 1. Once the program is approved and the finances are transferred, which will not happen until the July 1 mark, then we will start outreach, file transfer, cleanup, etc. Once this is a little bit more of a reality and there's some time associated with it, we'll sit down and make a work plan associated with what this transfer specifically looks like. So, board, I'm in front of you with consideration of board resolution 2502, which I'm going to switch the screen oh, yes, Miss Brenda.
Will we have to hire additional staff, Sarah?
So we have, let let me go to money. Money. So we preemptively requested a staff person. This puts us into the degree of we've needed one, given the number, small increments of vouchers we've taken over the years. This gives us that final push up and over the hump, where we'll have the funding to do so. So fully leased, these additional 60 vouchers, 50 vouchers, you'll see why I'm thinking 60, 50 vouchers will add about $60,000 in administrative funding to our budget, which will allow us to hire an additional housing services specialist so that we're not continuing to pile on an additional 50 vouchers on the staff that we already have.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. Tatum?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I just wanted to specifically point out that I really appreciate the contingency of like ensuring that we have a specific amount of hours per month that will have assistance in navigating this. Like as someone who's integrated new programs into existing programs, having that guidance and that grace, especially for like the undiscovered issues that may pop up. Like, I'm so, so glad to hear that that's part of the negotiations because I think that if this proceeds forward, that will serve us very, very well.
Thank you. Was my thought process as well. We've never done this. Our finance staff has never done this. Our program staff has never done this. And while we're good, like we are a high performing agency for a reason, we're going to encounter some things we've never dealt with and some things that we already know we have awareness of, that the usual prescribed HUD solutions aren't going to work. For example, we know that there is a household that no longer lives, the voucher holder household that had surrendered their voucher. They had not had an interim recertification or an annual recertification. So we don't know if they were paying too much rent or not enough rent, and perhaps the landlord is due money, perhaps the household is due money, and there's HUD regulations around how that's handled. In this case, because there's no longer a contractual relationship between the landlord and the tenant, the usual HUD methodologies won't work. And so I can make one up. And I can work with Sharice and Tracy and our attorneys, and we can make one up of what we think would work best with regulations. We really need HUD stamp of approval on that to be like, yes, we understand this is why. And so that's the unanticipated piece within there as well. So thank you for recognizing how really critical this is. Some folks may have seen in the headlines that many HUD technical assistance contracts have been cut. In speaking with the Phoenix field office, they will, anything that is being reduced, the field office is working on filling in. And there is staff within the Phoenix field office that can provide us this guidance, and or the regional field office. There's folks who know this stuff that is unusual for a housing authority to do, versus those of us that are standardly running a program without these without encountering the unusual situations. So thank you so much. I wanted to share with you, if I may, the resolution. Apologies, this was not sent to you in advance. I finished working on it with the attorneys about 30 minutes before the meeting. So, please forgive the scrolling. Is that readable for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me move
Looks
this
good.
little box. All right. So the title is exactly what I had on the slides. It's whereas the city of Flagstaff through the Housing Authority currently administers a program, and assists persons in its area in obtaining rental housing. Whereas we were asked by the Phoenix field office and HUD to accept this transfer of the Williams program, consisting of 50 vouchers, all of the funding, etc., that the city of Williams and their housing authorities support the transfer and is determined the program is no longer viable in its community. We talked to this body on February 20th and discussed the transfer. It was a discussion item only, no action taken. Same thing with city council. last week on February 25th, where council had the opportunity to learn and ask questions about it. Whereas the city of Flagstaff, if you choose to approve this resolution, believes that the acceptance of the WHA HCV program will provide the Housing Authority and the community with the opportunity to increase community resources and increase leasing area. And whereas, if you choose to approve it, the City of Flagstaff Housing Authority Board recommends that the Flagstaff City Council accept the request of HUD, the City of Williams, and the Williams Housing Authority to transfer the WHA HCV program to us through the City of Flagstaff under the conditions set forth in Exhibit A. Now, therefore, be resolved by the City of Flagstaff Housing Authority Board as follows. The board hereby recommends to City Council approval and acceptance from WHA and the City of Williams the transfer of its HCV program, funding and other funds subject to the conditions set forth. Effective date, Exhibit A right here. It is the items that I just reviewed with you, held fully harmless before. This is held harmless for things identified after the transfer date up to 2 years. The CMAP waiver for the first full year following the transfer date, 12-month lease-up time for the transferred 50 vouchers, and then the technical assistance requirements that we just went through. So those are all the acceptance contingencies. If approved, this exhibit will also be attached to the City Council resolution as well. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions of Sarah? Good explanation job, Sarah.
Thank you. I try. I know it can be super detailed and confusing, and that's never the goal. My goal is always to help people understand it to the greatest degree possible. So thank you.
I think you did a good job. I don't see any questions. If there are no further questions at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution as Sarah presented it to us. That's Resolution 25-2, the resolution of the City of Flagstaff Housing Authority Board recommending Flagstaff City Council accept the transfer of the Williams Housing Authority Housing Choice Voucher Program.
This is Tatum. I motion to approve.
Thank you, Tatum. And a second?
This is Becky. I'll approve. I'll
Thank you.
second.
Thank you, Mayor Daggett. It has been moved and seconded that we approve the motion as presented. Is there any further discussion? Then let's take a vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those approve the same sign? Those that do not approve the same sign? Motion carries. Good job, Sarah. Thank you, everybody, for your time as well. We have no informational items today. And I'm not aware that we have any general business reports. Any board member comments?
I do have one.
Oh, do you have a report? Go ahead.
Update on report. Last meeting, there was a question that came up regarding staffing at HUD. We have since received notification that the Phoenix field office only on the public and Indian housing side is going from a staff of 8 to a staff of 3, the director and 2 portfolio management specialists. And our portfolio specialist is not changing. The email states that the services they provide will not change. And while I am certain that that is true, that they are obligated to provide the same services, I think the timeliness we see from that may decrease given the staffing levels. I do not know the mechanism through which employees exited. I do not know if, there were so many different options for folks. I don't know what that looks like. We have not received a similar notification from the other side of HUD from the Phoenix field office. And so I'm really appreciative of the director we've been working with on the transfer being so upfront about what that staffing reduction looks like. On the funding front, we've received no notifications. All our funding is still flowing. We have access to the federal software systems that we pull money from, and our transfers related to the Housing Choice Voucher Program continue to be made into our bank account.
That's great news because it's all kind of scary right now.
It's a moving target, it seems, and I'm trying. I mean, headlines are great, but what do we have from HUD? So I'm working on to balance those with what are we actually seeing on the ground.
Yeah. Thank you for that update. Any other updates or anything from the board members? Thank you all for taking the time out for this special meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is Thursday, March 20th at 9, regular time. Hope to see you all then. And if there's nothing further, I move to adjourn.
Awesome.
We're adjourned. All right.
Thank you so much, everybody. Your time's really appreciated.
Thank you. Very good presentation, Sarah. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Stop in the recording now.